We are here from the State News Conference Room on Casual Wednesday. I'm Geoff Preston.
I'm Bondy.
We're here this week to talk about the playoff rankings, the weekly overreactions from fan bases and coaches and players alike as we get a little bit closer to getting a little bit more of a clear picture of what the Final Four teams are going to look like come December, late December and early January. The rankings came out last night. No surprise at the top with the top two. Mississippi State, Florida State held on. And no surprise with number 3, Auburn beating Ole Miss. They stayed at number 3. Oregon moves into the top 4. We're going to talk about that and other things in a little bit. We're just going to go through the top 10 here. Alabama is number 5. TCU is number 6. Kansas State jumped Michigan State. They're number 7. Michigan State, the Spartans, I know you all care about them. Number 8. 9 is Arizona State. 10 is Notre Dame. Assess.
Well, I think like you said, the first top 3 all make sense to me. Mississippi State, Florida State, Auburn, all pushed to the brink, but all won this week, and they deserve those spots that they remain at. Oregon, I thought, should deserve to slip in there. I think they're above Alabama and TCU.
Oregon, to me, honestly, has looked the most impressive since losing to Arizona. Just as an eye test thing.
I think they've looked impressive just in every game besides Arizona.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, you go back to that Michigan State game, just seeing them live. That's a really good team.
Oh, yeah.
I think in the long run they'll be there. I think they're going to win out and be in the playoff. That's my personal opinion. They're a very good team. The one that I think the rest of the rankings top 10 make a little sense besides the Michigan State.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to be an area that I'm sure a lot of our fans here at the Spartans are going to be talking about, is that this is a situation where Michigan State didn't play this week. They had a bye week, yet they get punished by the committee and have Kansas State leapfrog. And Kansas State did look good this week. They embarrassed Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, that I think you mentioned earlier, is about 500 now. So
they're 5-4 right now.
5-4. So not a great team. That's like beating up on a Michigan per se. And I don't think that's really necessarily worthy of them leapfrogging. And while the rankings right now don't mean as much as we get farther and farther, it does, get more important. But right now that does show that the committee still does not allow love for Michigan State or the Big Ten for that matter.
I think that's the most important thing is that if there was a Big 12 team in Michigan State's situation where they didn't play, another team played well against a team that's, middle of the road.
Right.
I don't think they get jumped. I think that a lot of people are saying don't panic. It's only the second rankings. I'm not saying panic, but Kirk Herbstreit said something really interesting on the actual show last night. He said, rankings wise, whether it's right or not, he kind of thinks Michigan State has hit a little bit of a ceiling. I don't necessarily know if I buy that 100%, but I just don't think that this looks that good for MSU. And also, we can get into the whole thing about whether or not they deserve it. I don't think that this should have happened, and I know you agree with me.
I don't think it should have happened at all, and I think you're punishing a team right now that has done everything it possibly can since losing to Oregon. You go back and then on the show that we were talking about, you mentioned last night, they said Michigan State doesn't have a great win, and I don't know how you don't consider beating Nebraska in a game that was a 24-point difference into the fourth quarter. Up 27-3. That was just a true embarrassment. They were rolling that Cornhuskers team until the final minutes. And that's the thing that I think Michigan State fans can be a little bit upset about is that Kansas State, comparing the two teams, Kansas State's loss was to Auburn at home. Good loss. Michigan State's loss was to Oregon on the road. And that game against Auburn, I remember watching. Kansas State could have won that game, but they missed field goals. They deserved to win that game. That's where I think the argument can come. And obviously the Big 12, you can say, has more opportunities for Kansas State to continue to win and get bigger wins. But I think if you're going based on right now, I don't know how you can have Kansas State ahead of Michigan State. That's the thing that I think Spartans should worry a little bit about. Because if Kansas State wins this week against TCU, and they run the table, Michigan State's not jumping them. It's just they don't have enough opportunities to jump them. So really, if you're a Michigan State fan, you just got to root against everyone else.
And I think probably the most troubling thing is you have to think about this with the committee. Is this just a week-to-week thing, or is this a trend of kind of maybe not looking at Michigan State in the Big Ten in the most appropriate light? I'll give you an example of that. What do you think happens? Michigan State wins. Obviously, Kansas State and TCU will play each other.
Right,
so one of those teams is moving back. Would you be that surprised? Arizona State beats Notre Dame, 9 and 10 teams.
Right.
One of them jumps Michigan State into the number 7 spot. Because honestly, I'm not surprised if that happens one bit.
Before yesterday, I would say, I'd be surprised about that.
Exactly.
But I think after those rankings, I think you can't be surprised about that.
Especially if one of them wins overly convincingly.
Right. Exactly. And I think that Michigan State's win over Ohio State would be huge, and that's obviously the biggest game they have left on their schedule right now, not including a potential Big Ten championship game. I think if it comes down to that, say Nebraska runs the table, then you have a top 10 matchup again, and that would be very beneficial for Michigan State's case in that situation. But as of right now, I think that's easily going to happen. I think they could easily get jumped, and I don't think that's fair to Michigan State. But, the whole style points is truly coming into play now. I know D'Antoni's been a guy who's always been against running up the score and, having style points. And while I don't think that opportunity will present itself this week against Ohio State, because both teams are pretty matched.
Might the weeks later.
But after this week, you got to really start thinking about, if Michigan State, you win against Ohio State, you got to start winning these games by 40 and just have really hold nothing back anymore. And if it comes to this week against Ohio State, if you can find a way to win that game by 20, 30 points, you need to keep gas on the pedal. Foot on the gas pedal. You need to find a way to keep winning convincingly, because right now they're doing everything they should be by winning, but they're going nowhere.
Although they have done that. I mean, the teams that they're supposed to really trounce, they have trounced. So maybe it doesn't mean as much as we thought, but maybe it will.
Yeah.
Anything else to add about the rankings at all? Anything else going to irk you?
I would say the only thing that I would add is that at this position next week, everything will be different. Michigan State loses to Ohio State.
Oh, we won't have these shows anymore.
Yeah,
you'll see us.
The conversation will be over, and they'll be playing simply for a bowl game, and maybe sneaking into the Peach Bowls and that large or something like that. But if they win this week, then as we move on and on, it's going to be key to watching other teams ahead of Michigan State and how they do. Like this week, you got Alabama, LSU. You're going to be rooting hard for an LSU to win. I mean, you got, as a Michigan State fan at this point in time, you really got to start hoping all these teams ahead of you lose, because if it stands as now, and you have a one-loss Big 12 and a one-loss SEC or undefeated SEC, and Florida State undefeated, and then a one-loss Pac-12,
there's no chance.
There's your 4 teams.
Yep.
There's your 4 teams.
Easy.
Michigan State and the Big Ten's reputation, they're not going to sneak in over a Big 12 team. That's just how it's going to be, and you got to root against all the other teams.
That in mind, it is just the second week. I know we're talking about ceilings and we're talking about the Peach Bowl, but this is just week 2. There's a ton of football to be played, and Mark D'Antonio and the Spartans have tended to play their best football in November. So we will see. We will be back later in the week for an Ohio State preview, and we will see if we will be able to come back here on Casual Wednesdays and still give you playoff videos if MSU can get a win against the Buckeyes. From the State News, I'm Geoff Preston.
I'm Bondy.
We'll see you later in the week.